this election is over. Donald Trump is going to be the 47th president of the United States, and he has won re-election. So buckle up, brace for impact. We're going to have 4 years of anarchy and chaos. It's a disaster, but I cannot imagine a scenario where Donald Trump does a good job and a Republican gets elected in 2028. My guess is that someone will beat the Republicans in 2028 because of how badly Donald Trump is going to break this country.
The best part about electing Donald Trump as president are his policies that put America first. But a close second is watching the media have a complete meltdown, like Joe Scarborough when he attacked Trump voters.
I will ask the question that I think is a fair question to ask. Who raised these people?
Yeah.
Because they were not raised by anybody in my neighborhoods that I grew up, any middle-class neighborhoods that I grew up in. These people were not there. They were not raised. I mean, they weren't in the classes I went to growing up. In elementary or middle or high school or college, they just weren't there. That wasn't the America I grew up in, where people would laugh at the idea of people of the press getting shot. Like everybody would like sit around and like, what? What's he talking about? Or again, the
laughing at the Puerto Rican
other
joke.
Things, laughing at the Puerto Rican joke.
My God,
that Puerto Ricans are a pile of trash. Are laughing at a 82, 83-year-old man being bludgeoned nearly to death. That's an applause line. That's a laugh line. Again, who are these people? Where are they coming from? And who raised them? And how did Donald Trump twist their point of view so much in 9 years that the brutalization of an 83-year-old man is something to laugh about, or the shooting of press members is an applause line?
Obama's campaign manager said Trump voters are the dark soul of America.
I'll be really honest about this. There are rational reasons, concrete reasons for why this defeat occurred. You talked about them: inflation, immigration, discontent among non-college voters, particularly young voters who did not go to college. But as many times as I hear them, and I and you and everybody will be hearing them for the rest of our lives, it just doesn't, on some level, ever make sense to me. And that goes to why I was wrong about this election. John Meacham wrote that book, The Soul of America. And I remember in 2017, he said he wouldn't have written that book if Trump had won the popular vote. Well, here we are. And last night I was thinking, oh my gosh, is that Madison Square Garden rally, is that the soul of America now? And the reality is that there is a dark part of the American soul, and Donald Trump appeals to it. And I think we make the mistake of thinking that the soul of America, as Joe Biden talks about, as John Meacham talks about, is this unitary one thing that is light and believes in equality and freedom and all these great virtues. But it also includes another part of our history, which I think African Americans and Native Americans are all too well acquainted with, a dark part, and Donald Trump speaks to that dark part.
And of course, you had Democrats calling half the country racist and sexist, including Joy Reid.
Anyone who has experienced or been in the United States for any period of time and experienced this country's history and knows it cannot have believed that it would be easy to elect a woman president, let alone a woman of color. Let's just be clear. And nothing that was true yesterday about how flawlessly this campaign was run is not true now. I mean, this really was an historic, flawlessly run campaign. Queen Latifah never endorses anyone. She came out and endorsed. She had every prominent celebrity voice. She had the Taylor Swiftie to the Swifties. She had the Beehive. Like, you could not have run a better campaign in that short period of time. And I think that's still true. It's this idea of, I want to be with the side that's waving the biggest flag. I want to fit in. And there is a huge element, to be honest, of anti-blackness in a lot of this. Anti-black Americanness specifically. And Paola and I have talked about this, that there is a part of that anti-blackness is a piece of it. Even though Enrique Tarrio, who's the head of the Proud Boys, is a black Latino, but he's down with white supremacists, down with them. And there's this idea that I'm black, but I'm not black. I may look black to you. I may be black if I'm walking through Bloomingdale's and get followed around. But in my mind, I'm identifying with whiteness, because whiteness means privilege, and it means not being a black American. This has to be unpacked, because this shift among Latino men is significant.
CNN.
Let's be honest about this, okay? Let's be absolutely blunt about it. There were appeals to racism in this campaign, and there is racial bias in this country, and there is sexism in this country. And anybody who thinks that that did not in any way impact on the outcome of this race is wrong. Let's not confuse what this was and what it wasn't. Let's be very clear-eyed about it.
But like I do think it's bitter in the mouth. The racial and gender dimension of this. And the only way that you can kind of begin to see it, if you don't see it right away, is, can you imagine a woman of color acting like Donald Trump acted, even for one day? The kinds of stuff that he said, the kinds of things that he did, the way that he would insult people. If you're a person of color, you don't feel you have that freedom. You feel like you really are somewhat constrained. You're always running something in the back of your mind like, how am I going to be perceived? And also, if I say this, will they think that all black people are this way or all women are this way? So there's a license that he had to just be a fool, just to be an obnoxious ass to everyone. And for people to go, well, he can still be president. What do we have to do to be acceptable? I'm hearing from women of color, like, she should have been qualified enough to be able to not have this sort of an outcome.
The View.
I think if you look at the New York Times this morning, the headline was, America makes a perilous choice. I think that in 2016, we didn't know what we would get from a Trump administration, but we know now. And we know now that he will have almost unfettered power. And so I worry, not about myself, actually. I don't worry about my station in life. I worry about the working class. I worry about my mother, a retired teacher. I worry about our elderly and their Social Security and their Medicare. I worry about my children's future, especially my daughter, who now has less rights than I have. And I remember my father telling me many, many years ago that I was the first person in his family to enjoy full civil rights. And now I have less civil rights than I had when he told me that. So again, I'm profoundly disturbed that the 14th Amendment of the Constitution did not prevent someone who participated in an insurrection from becoming president of the United States. I think that going forward, the convicted felon box on employment applications better be taken off, because if you can be the president of the United States, then you should not be prevented from employment in this country, because I remember applying for my jobs as a federal prosecutor, and there was a box for convicted felons. Well, and so that box better be taken off. And I think our healthcare system is now at risk. I think
no fluoride for anyone.
Yeah, economists have made clear that he's going to increase the debt by $7.75 trillion. I'm worried about mass deportation and internment camps, and I'm also worried about Elon Musk warning Americans to prepare for temporary hardship. I'm surprised at the result, but I'm not surprised. As a woman of color, I was so hopeful that a mixed-race woman married to a Jewish guy could be elected president of this country. And I think that it had nothing to do with policy. I think this was a referendum of cultural resentment in this country.
Well, I think it...
ABC's David Muir made excuses for Kamala. He not only blamed Biden, but also the lack of time she had to run a campaign.
A lot of people are going to be looking to President Biden. His decision to bow out after that horrible debate performance in June, whether or not that was a decision that should have been made earlier, that would have perhaps given the Democratic Party more time to do some sort of primary, or would have given Kamala Harris more time. However it turned out, or whoever the Democratic Party chose or people voted for, perhaps that would have given them more than 107 days, which is all she had to introduce herself as a candidate at the top of the ticket.
There's certainly going to be a lot of discussions and deep soul searching, I think, within the Democratic Party about how this all unfolded, and a lot of deep questions for the president about the way he went out of this race, the timing of this. Could the outcome have been different if Democrats had had time for a primary, for instance?
And President Biden, for the longest time, thought he was best positioned to keep Donald Trump returning to the White House. That's a calculation they'll all have to look back on.
Yeah, I'm sure running Kamala earlier would have been great for the Democrats, considering she's the least popular candidate in history. CBS took a different strategy. They were very disappointed in the loss, but they decided to uplift Kamala by mentioning January 6th and how nothing like that happened this election.
The vice president talked about there being a peaceful transfer of power. We heard John Dickerson say, in ages past, that would sort of be a throwaway line. She lingered on it. What did you make of her remarks?
That was an important point to make to people, is just to remind them what happened 4 years ago when we didn't have a peaceful transfer of power. And again, I think that was a positive message to remind them that, because again, the country was so divided. If you talk to people before the election, so many people were afraid of the outcome, whether you talk to a Trump supporter or a Harris supporter. They were so afraid of what the outcome was going to be. And so to bring it back to the fact that we are a country that will survive this moment, no matter if you wanted her to win or wanted her to lose, we'll survive this moment. We will continue on. Our democracy will continue because we do have adults in the room here who are going to give the peaceful transfer of power, who are going to help during a transition. And reminding the American people that they're going to do that, I think, was honestly top notch.
Even when she loses badly, they decide to shift the narrative and paint her to be the better person. The media could have taken the opportunity to learn from their mistakes. They could have stopped attacking half the country, pushing false narratives, and focused on what actually matters. But instead, they decided to double down. Trump voters are evil, racist, misogynist. They made excuses for Kamala and blamed Joe Biden, who they promised just months ago was fit for office. When talking about the future, they didn't talk about the American people. Instead, they aggressively vowed to attack Trump and his supporters even more, saying it's a battle for democracy, good versus evil.
They are going to start pushing to see how far the country is going to let them go without pushback, without protest.
They want to divide the country even further, and they will do anything to keep pushing their agenda.